Joining us now is former Reform UK candidate, Mayuran Senthilnathan. Mayuran, great as always to see you. So lots to chat about, but let's kick off with what are these rumours about a challenge to Keir Starmer? I mean, he won an election hardly a blink ago, and now all of a sudden they're saying he's on the nose, he's on the way out. What's actually happening there, Mayuran?
Well, Keir Starmer is actually now the most unpopular prime minister in modern times. In all polling history, he's failed on the economy, on borders, on energy prices. Every week seems to be the worst week in the Labour government. But now, as a result of that, the vultures are swirling around, and ministers are now trying to work out how they can steal the crown of Keir Starmer. And in a preemptive attack, Number 10 Downing Street, the aides and officials in Number 10 Downing Street were briefed the press a few days ago to say that there were ministers looking to actually swirl around and take the prime ministerial role. And in particular, the health secretary, Wes Streeting, was the prime target. And it just so happened that the next morning, the health secretary, Wes Streeting, was due for the media rounds. Now, he went on the media round. He's a very slick performer in front of the journalists, and he basically almost played the victim, and he showed his solidarity with Keir Starmer. And as a result, he played the victim, and Keir Starmer looked like the villain. So the whole kind of thing kind of backfired. And Keir Starmer had to go up in front of the House of Commons and kind of blame it on his officials who were chaotic and kind of running riot, and nothing to do with him. He looked like a couple of parents who've been caught by their kids arguing and kind of saying to the public, nothing to see here. But why this is so important is that it is the first crack in the Labour government's administration. We've been talking for a while about how they've been massively failing. But now we're starting to see those cracks start to develop. And I think this will precipitate a 2027 general election come early. Now, Keir Starmer, whether you love him or hate him, he has the mandate of the British public. So if he goes and Wes Streeting or someone else were to take over, they would not have the mandate of the British people, and they will be vulnerable to losing their seat as well. So I hope this is the first crack in the dam of the British government, of the Labour government, that precipitates an early 2027 general election, just as Nigel Farage has predicted.
Absolutely. Caroline.
Well, Mayuran, one of the biggest stories this week has undoubtedly been the Trump lawsuit against the BBC. Donald Trump has said that he will be proceeding with that despite the apology that the BBC gave him. They refused to compensate him, of course. Here's what he had to say on Air Force One.
What BBC did, nobody would even think a thing like that was done. They actually changed the words coming out of my mouth.
So the BBC has apologised and retracted the report, but they say they won't pay any compensation.
Well, we'll sue them. We'll sue them for anywhere between $1 billion and $5 billion, probably sometime next week.
I mean, no small change. What is the feeling over there, Mayuran? Are people cheering on Trump? Is there a lot of love for the BBC over this mistake that they say they made?
Well, I think there is a lot of love for Trump over this, and they do feel like there's been a massive injustice. And I think we feel ashamed of the BBC, at least a lot of us do on the right. And this is the first hard evidence of the BBC and their lack of impartiality that we've always sensed in the background. And the thing to understand is that the BBC is not like the outsiders. It is taxpayer funded. And as a result of that taxpayer funding, because they don't have to face the free markets, they've become complacent, they've become arrogant, and they've used the platform to pontificate their progressive ideology. And what we see is that in the BBC, I don't think there is remorse, even though they've been caught red-handed. BBC journalists are still trying to call this a far-right conspiracy. And the thing I want to make clear is that there is something in Britain called the silent majority, which is the direct consequence of the BBC, because the BBC holds the reins of the Overton window. Because of their progressive agenda, they restrict debate, they restrict discussion of what is acceptable. And that leads to real life consequences like the grooming gang scenario, which has really stained our country. And the BBC, they don't necessarily, although they do commit some misinformation, what they really do is they censor by omission. It's what they don't report that is the real scandal. scandal. I mean, I don't mind the BBC talking about, you know, the climate change and the world is burning because of the, you know, increasing temperatures, as long as they talk about net zero and the deindustrialization and the expensive energy bills. I don't mind them talking about diversity being our strength, as long as they talk about mass immigration and the fracturing of our society. I don't mind them criticizing the IDF, as long as they talk about Hamas as a terrorist organization and the radicalization of much of the Palestinian people. You know, we have a news organization called GB News, which is doing enormously well, better than the BBC in terms of the ratings. Why? Because they represent the silent majority, and their success is a direct consequence of the failure of the BBC and the lack of impartiality that they demonstrate.